everyone. I'm Kendria. I need you to go like, follow, and subscribe Soul Productions.
What's up, everyone? And this is Next Level Thinking. What's up, everyone? We have another great episode of Next Level Thinking, always keeping you inspired and much more to help you take it to the next level. It's your host, Chris Holmes, but today we have a special guest by the name of
Brad Blazar.
Awesome. You put a little extension on the last name, Blazar.
You got it.
But tell the audience a little bit about yourself, because I can just feel the energy, maybe a little beast over there, but like introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are.
Well, Chris, my background's not like most other people. When I was in school, brought up in a family basically where I think kind of the expectation was, you're going to go to college, you're going to study something, you're going to come out, you're going to get a career. And I like college for the experience, but I would say that I wasn't really a good student. And so I kind of goofed off a little bit here and there. And I responded to an ad in the local paper and ended up going to work in the oil and gas business.
Oh, wow.
And was actually hired to get on the telephone and basically just reach out and call, high net worth, accredited investors, big time people with lots of money to see if they wanted to invest alongside the oil company that I was working with. And I get pretty good at closing people, knew how to sell, knew how to talk to people over the telephone. And after doing that for about a year, went to work for another company and was really only working about 18 hours a week, because the way that my week was structured is I'd go to school and then I'd come in after school, usually 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And, we would call out to the West Coast. And, dude, as a college kid, working maybe 18, 20 hours a week, I was making 60, 80 grand.
Oh,
and
wow.
I said to myself, well, holy crap, I'm not even working full time at this. I wonder what would happen if I really just did this full time. And so I kind of just quit going to class and started really focusing on doing it more full time. But unfortunately, the second company I went to work with, the founders and CEOs were, let's just say, a little on the shady side.
Oh, man, that's never
And
good.
so I had to leave. And when I left, my investors followed me. They never really met me because I was a young kid in my 20s. And so they naturally turned to me and said, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, I don't know. And they said, why don't you do it, but do it honestly, do it with some integrity. And so at the age of 23, I was actually catapulted into the seat as the CEO and founder of an oil company. Didn't know anything at all about running a business or running a company. All I knew is I just needed some business head and some letterhead. And so started getting on the phone, started raising money. And I grew that company, learning very quickly over the course of about 10 years to a platform where we had, 35 employees. I occupied an entire floor of a big bank building in downtown Austin, had drilling programs in Texas, Oklahoma, raising millions of dollars a month. And then, after about 10 years of doing that in the late 1980s, 2 things really changed. Number one, oil prices fell. And number 2, the tax laws changed. And so I came home and I said, as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, when there are things that you can no longer control that are affecting your business or that are affecting your industry, many times it's okay to close the doors and then to pivot. And so that's what I did. I closed the doors over the course of about a year. I never had to file for bankruptcy. That really never even entered my mind because we didn't have any debt. But I looked at myself introvertly, and the lesson here for a lot of your listeners, Chris, did something most people will never do. I sat down and I said, what is my primary skill? What is Brad Blazar really, really good at that other people would be willing to pay me a lot of money for? And what I realized was my primary skill was I knew how to raise money. I raised millions. And so over the last 20 plus years, that's really what I've done. My career has largely been built around raising billions of dollars through my efforts and the efforts of sales teams that I've led as a national sales director for real estate groups, et cetera. And so, that's now, of course, really transcended to a point in my life where now I'm a 2-time author. I've written 2 books. Both of them are available on Amazon. The first book was actually recently ranked as the #1 read for young entrepreneurs It's called On the Wings of Eagles, Learn to Soar in Life. And it really talks about this concept that I've trademarked called the art of beliefology. I believe if you change your beliefs and change your habits, you can have dramatic transformation in your future. And then my second book, which is really more for leaders, entrepreneurs, managers, people that supervise or manage others, it's called Put Some Thrive in Your Hive, How to Unlock the Potential in Any Organization. Because I found that there's a big disconnect between employees want and what employers think they want. And unfortunately, most employers, most managers do not know how to properly inspire and motivate the people that work for them. And so that's one thing that I've done. I've gone into some companies, many of them billion-dollar companies that have had me come in and train and lead their leaders and managers, and really how to have a better connection and really create a culture where everybody is working together with a champion attitude.
Love that. All solid answers and much more. And as I was listening, I was getting a tremendous amount of value from that. But one of the first thing I got to ask is, you started off just approaching and making calls to high net worth people for sales. And I know a lot of times when people hear sales, it's like, oh crap, here comes sales. What is, I'm just being So what is the most common thing that you hear people say when they're trying to get into sales? And what is, I guess, the most common response or solution to help them overcome that?
Yeah, so a couple things. Number one is there's a big difference between being a salesperson and being a closer, okay? The salesperson is a person that can make a decent living, but they're never going to make a great living. The closer is the person that is going to come in when the salesperson gives up. That's still going to close the sale. That's the difference between making 60 to 100 grand a year and making 3 to 500,000 a year. I have an expression. Now, as we've all grown up, we've all been taught to be nice, to be polite, and to be courteous. And so 9 out of 10 times, a salesperson, when they get an objection, will not overcome the objection or not try to figure out really whether the prospect is telling the truth or not. They'll just say, Chris, let me just send you some information. And I'll follow up with you next week. And so the phrase that I've come up with to describe most salespeople is they sell the flirt. They're flirty. Oh, thank you so much for having an interest in our goods and services. I'll call you next week. Well, anybody that's been in sales any length of time knows next week never happens. Because now when you try to call that prospect back, they're like, oh shit, yeah, that's Chris Holmes again. I don't want to take the call.
Now that's like the truest thing too.
And you go into that black hole of oblivion wondering why you ain't making more money. Now, the closer understands that 9 out of 10 times what the prospect just said as an objection is a bunch of bullshit. And so the closer has been trained. He's memorized certain techniques and certain closing lines. And he understands how to bring what I call a positive tension to the conversation. The skill of being a good closer is to create a positive tension to bring that prospect to close. Now, let me give you an example. When I was in the oil business, I had this very wealthy doctor that was a prospect of mine. Now, he made the mistake of flying out on his private jet to meet me. That was the first mistake. So I knew right then and there the dude had a shitload of money. But let's be honest, there is the risk when you invest in an oil well that you will end up drilling a dry hole and you'll end up losing the entire investment. And so the analogy that I always used to give my salespeople is, remember when you were a little kid and you were at the neighborhood swimming pool and you climbed up the ladder to the high dive for the very first time. And you crawl out to the edge of that diving board and you look down and you're like, holy shit, that's a lot higher than I thought it was. And you're like going like this, whoa. And then you look behind you and you realize there's a long line of kids behind you and you can't go backwards because then you're going to embarrass yourself and you're going to look like an idiot. So you finally take that big leap of faith. You realize you didn't get killed and it was actually fun. And so you run up the ladder and you do it over and over again. Well, in sales, I had this doctor that for whatever reason did not close. And so one night, as I was sitting there on the phone, I just said, Dr. Schneck, it takes two things to invest in an oil well. And he said, what? I said, it takes big balls and lots of money. Which of the two don't you have?
That's straight to the point.
And as a 25-year-old kid saying that to a dude that's probably in his 50s worth millions of dollars, most people would not do that. But that's the difference between a closer and someone selling flirt. Now, after what seemed like eternity, he said, tell me again how much 3 units in your drilling program costs. And I said, baby, go get your checkbook and let's get you on board. He became one of my biggest investors. That's creating tension. Now, did I say anything insulting? No. But what I did is I got to the root of the problem and I said, look, dude, it takes two things, just balls and money. And I know you got both. So prove to me that you got a big set of cojones. Prove to me you got a big old fat checkbook and let's get you signed up. The salesperson would have said, Mr. Schnack, let me call you back next week after you think about it over the weekend. And then, of course, he never would have closed, never would have made the big commish, and never would have gotten to the point that I'm at where I'm a closer. I'm a salesperson. Now, the problem with people when they hear about sales is they think that 9 out of 10 times the person that is the prospect doesn't want the product or service that you're selling. I've always found, and I firmly believe, that in business, price is always an issue when there's an absence of value. If you can prove that you offer a solution to a problem that somebody else has, they will write you a check to solve that problem, right? That's why in my business as a coach, people pay me big time money because I'm solving a problem either for them or for their company or for their business. Brad, our salespeople don't know how to close. Great, bring me in. I got a solution to that. I have written books. I have closed billions of dollars, and I guarantee after a day and a half with old Brad Blazar, they will know how to close. Great, what does it cost? Boom, I tell them, no problem. We'll write you a check. Come on in. Problem, solution.
Awesome. And that's a tremendous amount of value as well, because like so many times when people think of sales, they were thinking that, and then you just explain even in depth and detail. Don't be a sell if you want to achieve even more, as in my podcast, Next Level Thinking, become a closer, close the deal.
Well, you also, though, have to disarm people. Whenever I called a prospect on the very first call, literally within the first minute, I told them right up front, I am not calling today to sell you anything. That's not the purpose of my call. You have to disarm people, because once you disarm people and you have an open conversation and you start pulling back the layers of the onion, they will tell you what their interests are. They will tell you what their problems are. And then at the end of the call, I simply say, you see, like I told you right up front, wasn't calling to sell you anything today, but in the future, if I have an opening on one of our programs or I have something that I think might be of interest to you, would you like me to put you on a list and just give you a call back? Sure, okay. And so what you do is you move the process in sales forward. I always, in the sales process, am trying to move people to a future event. If they're not closing and I don't get a sale or a commitment, what I'm doing is I'm then moving them to a future event, because what I have found is most people suck at follow-up. They don't know how to follow up.
A lot of people don't even follow up.
Most people just give up after the third or fourth attempt, if they even give it 3 or 4 attempts. But statistics have shown and proved that traditionally it takes 7 to 15 touches to take somebody from being a prospect to a customer. So think about that. If the average person doesn't go the distance and they don't understand things like linear and nonlinear follow-up via email or sending a person a link to a blog or to an article or just picking up the phone or whatever, most people never go the distance. They just assume, I tried 3 times, dude didn't buy, next. But what I found is if you have a coordinated follow-up system that schedules a series of follow-ups over the course of a couple of weeks, 7 to 15 touches, 9 out of 10 times you will close the sale. And I get to a point typically after about the 11th or 12th touch where if somebody hadn't bought, I just say, Chris, have you ever met anybody in your God-given life that has worked so hard to get your business? And the answer invariably 99.9% of the time is no. Dude, Well, then let's get out your checkbook or your Visa, MasterCard. Let's get you on the train. Let's get you signed up. Now, they're going to say one of two things: either great, let me get my checkbook, or let's go ahead and get started, or they're going to come up with the real objection.
Yes.
But see, as somebody that understands human nature, and 9 out of 10 times that most people are really not giving you the true objection, is you have to understand how to isolate that objection and really bring closure to that conversation, because people always have desire. People want to be closed. It's just that most people are too damn nice that they never ask for the sale.
That is true, because a lot of people are afraid to ask for the sale. And that just made me think of another great question. Well, not in question, just like going forward off the momentum you have just started off, is there's a lot of money left on the table. I mean, if a lot of people are afraid to ask for that sale and do the follow-ups and things like that, there's a lot of money left out there on the table, because I hear so many times people be like, there's not enough money, there's not enough customers, they're all taken. Like, just by listing, by what you're saying, there's a lot of money left.
I live in Houston, Texas, the 4th largest city in North America, with how many millions of people and how many billionaires, how many billions of dollars. There's so many rich people within 30 miles of me. What there is not is courage. You see, I got so many aspects out there I could be talking to you on a daily basis. Most people lack courage. They don't have the courage to pick up the phone, or they don't have the courage to go knock the doors, or they don't have the courage to get out and hustle. They don't have the grit. Well, let me tell you a story. I've got a coaching client who owns a couple of barber shops in Tennessee. This dude's business is shut down because of coronavirus. He's a brick and mortar. He's non-essential. He had to lay off all of his people. Well, this dude had the balls to look at his wife and say, it ain't going to affect me. He got his barbershop license. He put on the shirt with his logo. He hopped in his Cadillac SUV, grabbed his clippers, and he drives out to one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Knoxville, Tennessee, and just starts knocking doors. And when the door opened, he said, hi, my name is Zach. I own Cliff's Barbershop here in town, and unfortunately we're closed because we're non-essential. And so I'm just driving through the neighborhood, want to see if anybody here needs a haircut. Yeah, come on in, dude. Wow. And he said, not only would people invite me in, they'd offer me a beer. And so now, rather than giving them one of my beers in my fridge, I'm drinking their beers. But they were so impressed that I went out and did what I was doing, that I was getting literally $50 and $100 tips. And in a couple hours, the dude made $1,000. He said, well, hell, in a couple hours, I made more money than I make sitting in my barbershop all day long, cutting hair in a brick and mortar. And I said, Baha, your revelation, your aha moment, maybe you just thought of a brilliant new business model, that what you really need to do is get a beautiful van, have it wrapped with a cool badass logo, and you are the dude that's out cutting hair in people's homes, where you come to them, they don't have to come to you. Ooh. And so it's all about how you look at things and the belief about reality. It's like you said earlier, you know, people have this mental thought about sales. No, dude, it's how you look at things. There's always goodness in every challenge life throws you, but it's how you look at the obstacles. And more importantly, it's the decisions that you make related to those obstacles and bumps in the road. The guy could have sat at home, had a pity party, but instead he goes out and he makes shit happen. I love that.
Awesome. I love that too, because it's not allowing your current situation to like stop and hold you back. You say like, you know what, I'm about to innovate, adapt, and I'll make things happen. And if you actually build a system correctly, you can be one of the most biggest barbers shops or franchise, because I can just see the McDonald's kind of franchise model in that. But I could cut from the shop, and then I have my other barbers go out and cut from the convenience of your home. So yep. That also brings up to a good point that I just hit my head, that in times of crisis comes a spark of innovation. This is where you will find people who will rise to the challenge. New leaders will come forth, and this will also expose the people who are not really ready for those challenges as well. So you always have to adapt to different things. So I want to, with all this great information, I want to go to something that I just written down, the importance of focusing on your prime skill. I know you mentioned that a little bit earlier, but go a little bit more detail on like honing in on a skill set that's going to make you different from your competition.
Absolutely. You know, people get into jobs or careers that are not necessarily suited for them. And I always tell people that what attracts money, what creates wealth, is not necessarily knowledge, it's a skill. You've got to be really, really good at something. And if you're really, really good at something, people will pay you a ton of money, lots of money, millions upon millions of dollars. And I remember Steve Harvey, the black comedian that now, of course, has his own TV show. He was on his big stage in front of network. And he was talking one day, and he said, I believe everybody here in this whole damn audience has what my grandma used to call, you're something special. He said, God put something special in each and every one of us. And unfortunately, in the journey we call life, most people will never find out what their something special is. He said, let me give you a good example. Yitzhak Perlman is considered to be one of the great virtuoso violinists. He is paid millions of dollars to play the violin because he found his something special. He nurtured it. He trained at Juilliard, which is one of the best music schools. As an example, Beyonce, one of the greatest entertainers in the world, found her something special. Boy, that girl knows how to sing and dance and entertain people and just make them feel good through her music. I, Steve Harvey, have found my something special. It's making people laugh. But he said most people will never look at themselves and say, what is my something special? What am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? Maybe when you were a kid, you were really talented at baseball, or maybe you were really talented at football. And when you got to a certain point in life, when you were out of school, you gave up that interest. But just think maybe where you could be in life if you really had nurtured that, maybe hired a coach, and then went on to become someone like a Derek Jeter or like a Michael Jordan or somebody of greatness. And so I think what happens with a lot of people is they never really look at themselves and ask, what am I good at? What is my primary skill? My primary skill when I looked at myself introvertly was, number one, I know how to raise money. I know how to close people. And over my career, I raised over $2 billion. My other big primary skill is I know how to coach people to greatness. And that's why we've trademarked what we do. It's because we don't want anybody else to be able to do something similar. And that is the philosophy. If you change your beliefs and your habits, I can transform your life and get you to a better place. And the reason I can say that is I've done it for so many other people that I can point to, and I can tell stories about how this person's life was transformed or how this dude's life was transformed. And when I sit down with people and they say, well, what is it that you do? I tell them. And I say, I've done it for all of these other people. Chris, if I can do it for you as well, is there any reason that you would not want to start the process and actually get enrolled and start working alongside me today? Great. Boom, let's go. And so one of the things that I find with a lot of people, Chris, is they don't understand how to tell people what they do. I learned a long time ago when I was in sales, when people asked me, Brad, what do you do? I would tell them, and it was a big mistake because what I was immediately doing is I was commoditizing myself. Think, if you're a CPA and somebody says, what do you do? And you say, I'm a CPA, and they've already got one. Are you a person of interest to them? Do you think they're going to call you? No, they've already got a CPA because you've commoditized yourself. But if somebody said, hey, what is it you do? And you respond by saying, before I tell you what I do, let me tell you what I believe. I believe everybody has a right to reduce their taxes and pay as little in tax as possible. Right? Now the person's going, oh, you got my attention. And then you respond after that by saying, what I do is I help people reduce their taxes legally so they pay as little to the Uncle Sam as they possibly can. Boom. Now you become a person of interest where the dude is like, well, how do you do that? Well, let me tell you what I do. You asked. Now I'll tell you. I use all of the legal loopholes and all of the legal shelters that are available to very wealthy people that most commoners don't know anything about. And we use all of those tools to your advantage so that you're able to use the same tools that rich people have access to that more than likely you never knew existed. Is your CPA doing those things for you today? Maybe you and I should have a conversation. And so it's really about understanding how you explain to people what you do so that you use the law of attraction and become the buyer in a relationship where people are calling you, wanting to do business with you, rather than you pursuing people only to catch them, to find out after you caught them, maybe you didn't want to catch them in the first place.
Tremendous amount of value. So with all that and much more, I want you to close us out with a closing statement and where can they find you? Because I'm pretty sure with all this valuable information, they want to know even more how they can, like, as in my podcast, take it to the next level, or in your words, just beast it out and just take control of
Yeah,
their
I
life.
tell everybody, man, every day you get out there, you want to be a beast, because being beastly is a sexy thing to do. Trust me. I've been a wimp and I've been beastly. Being beastly sexy, man. It attracts the ladies. But I'll tell you, I'm easy to find, man. My website's pretty simple. It's just my first and last name. It's bradblazar.com. My last name is spelled B-L-A-Z, like zebra, A-R. Just make sure you put an A at the end, Brad Blazar. I'm on Instagram, Brad Blazar. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. My 2 books are on Amazon. You can go buy the 2 books. Like I said, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, the first book that I wrote, On the Wings of Eagles, it's a compilation of stories, because over my career, dude, I've been around some big time thought leaders. I mean, I've personally heard from, or I've personally interacted with people like Kevin O'Leary, Magic Johnson, Joe Namath, Rudy Rudiger, Fran Tarkenton, Roger Staubach, all these big time people. And what I learned as I was exposed to them is they think very differently than most everybody else. They've got habits and they've got beliefs. And so when you read that book, what you're doing is you're getting into the proper mindset. You're actually getting into their beliefs and understanding what it is they do on a daily basis, which is why we call it On the Wings of Eagles. They are eagles. Most everybody else are a bunch of chickens just walking around plucking at the ground. You don't want to be a chicken, you want to be an eagle. The second book is also on Amazon, Put Some Thrive in Your Hive, and it really talks about how you as a manager, a leader, an entrepreneur can provide praise and recognition to your salespeople or your employees so that they go on to greatness and make your organization and make your company great. The other thing I'm going to offer today, Chris, to anybody listening is Harvard University did a study years ago where they looked at hundreds of people. And they asked that big audience, how many of you have goals? And about 14 or 15% raised their hand. They said, okay, but let's see, how many of you have actually taken the time to write your goals down somewhere like a piece of paper or in a journal? And what they found is only 3% of the people did that. Just 3%. They followed that group over a couple of years, and then they went back to that very same group, and they asked everybody in the group, how much money you make, how much money you make. And what they found is the 3% that had taken the time to write down their goals earned 10 times more than the other 97% combined. Not 3 times, 10 times. So I'm going to make available to anybody my free goal planning guide. We have a goal planning guide. It's 13 pages that tells people specifically how to focus on goals, what goals have to have specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound. We normally sell this for $20. I'm going to give it away for free. All anybody has to do is just send an email to us at info, that's info at bradblazar.com, and just put in the message, want the Beast Goal Planning Guide, and boom, we'll send it out to you for free as our gift just for listening in to Chris's podcast today. I always believe in adding value first, disarming people before I ask them to hire me as a coach. No, I'm just kidding. But I want to give that away because I believe everything good in life starts with clear vision and goals. And I tell people, if you've got goals floating around up in your head, they ain't doing you any good. Mark Cuban says there's a big difference between being an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur. And it all starts with putting your goals in writing so that you can back them with action, because goals without action are nothing but dreams. Dreams, folks, don't put money in the bank.
Awesome. Great way to close this out. So we're going to close this out with great energy and beasting out as always. It's your host, Chris Holmes, and I have my special guest by the name of
Brad Blazar.
Awesome. Make sure you share, subscribe, and much more so we can keep that energy going and helping people take it to the next level. And always believe there's a beast inside of you, and it's time for you to unleash it. Peace and much love.
All the way. I wouldn't.